it over to Senator Ferguson to discuss some progress on the state level in Maryland. Thank you.
Good morning. So I promised 8 minutes or less, and so let's just buckle up, right? We got a lot to go through here quickly for what is it like in Maryland. Again, my name is Bill Ferguson. I proudly represent the Fightin' 46th District, which is everything in downtown Baltimore City around the water. This is a fascinating conference at a time where things that are happening in Ferguson and in Baltimore. On the ground at the end of April, it was one of the toughest moments our city has seen. But I think a lot of us who have been in the work for a while, our initial thought was, we're surprised it didn't happen earlier. The fact of the matter is that the city is more segregated than we've been in generations. Access to opportunity is entirely unequal, and it replicates itself in the housing market, but most acutely in the school system. So for the next 7.5 minutes, I want to quickly talk to you about an initiative that I've pursued, introduced a bill last year, but give you kind of the context of where it came from and then where I hope it goes moving forward. So here is how I see this interrelated problem. Number one, our schools are more segregated today than they were 40 years ago. That should be pretty depressing to all of us who believe in what we call the American dream. This should not be the case, but the facts of the matter are that it is. Second, our schools are stagnant in the type of skills that are being conveyed to children. And I think often in the education world, we talk about these two concepts separately. It's my belief that in a 21st century world, we cannot talk about these things as two separate silos. They are one in the same. So how do we progress? Here is what the data looks like nationally. As we all know, for the first time in 2014, the American public schools are more, it's a majority-minority enrollment in America's public schools. Therefore, what we should see is a public school system of integrated, highly diverse school systems. I'm going to show you two maps. The first, for those of you who are not familiar with the Baltimore, here is a picture of Baltimore County and Baltimore City. Baltimore City is within, the county is surrounding. What this map shows, the census tracts are colored in purple. And so the lighter the color, the lower income the census tract. The more purple the color, the higher income the census tract. The dots are schools. So the larger the dot and more orange it is, the more highly concentrated low-income students enrolled. Now I forgot to preface. I am unfortunately using socioeconomic diversity to talk about racial diversity and racial integration. I think this is a stain on American history that these two data points are so highly correlated. But moving forward, and this proposal relies on socioeconomic integration. In the Baltimore region, they are, it is too close together to separate. And I've chosen socioeconomic for legal reasons, but also for policy-wise. So we'll get to that in just a second. So the orange dots are concentrated in downtown Baltimore City around the white census districts, lower income census tracts. Here is the next picture. What you will see is the exact inverse. This is now a graph, the larger the dot, the higher the achievement level. If you look in the top right-hand corner, you will see a almost direct correlation that as the concentration of low-income students increases in a school, the achievement levels of the school drop precipitously. This is a direct correlation. We know for a fact that when we concentrate poverty, the students in the concentrated schools where the poverty is concentrated lose out. We know it to be true, and unfortunately, I don't believe we're doing enough to combat it. Here are some statistics about Maryland, one of the wealthiest states in the country. Again, we have a majority-minority enrollment. When you look at Maryland's public schools, for the average white student, only 27% of their classmates in their public schools are low income. When you look at Latino and black students, it immediately jumps to at least 50% on average of the school are from a low income background. 1 in 4 black students today in Maryland is at a school that is 99 to 100% minority. And when you look on average in Maryland, with a school that's 99 to 100% minority enrollment, on average, it's at least 70% concentration of low-income students. I believe that this is totally unconscionable. Let's get to problem 2. This is very quick. It helps to sort of look at our economy, the things that have changed, how quickly things have changed in the last 75 years, where we were to where we are. Here's a look at the classrooms. When we look at the school design from 75 years ago and we look at the school design today, largely they replicate one another. How we are teaching our students and what we are teaching them do not match the sophistication of the economy that we have. And in a globalized world where there is greater diversity, the most important skills are those skills around problem solving, collaboration, knowing how to work within a group, especially with people that don't look like you or come from the same background as you. Those are things you cannot learn in a textbook. Those are things you can only experience to learn. And so my argument with next generation schools is that not only for low-income students and minority students is this an issue, but for our wealthy students and our white students this is a problem, because we are not preparing them for the skills that they need to be successful in the economy that we are moving towards. So just a few more details. I'm going to skip through these very quickly. What we're seeing is that the economy is changing rapidly. The jobs that we need of tomorrow are not your standard manufacturing or agricultural jobs. We're seeing high school and 2-year and 4-year degrees being ever more required. The demands of the workforce are not being met within our traditional schooling environments. We can go into questions about this. I'm going to skip through these pretty quickly. And then lastly is that our academic outcomes are pretty stagnant. When you look at even at our highest achieving schools, we haven't improved all that much over the last 20 years. Sure, we're doing better, but we're not dramatically improving like we're seeing in other countries across the globe. And one of our greatest assets, our country's diversity, is not being maximized and leveraged to improve the outcomes for all students. So, what do we do about it? In Maryland, I've introduced a concept called Next Generation Schools. It has 6 basic principles. The only way that we will tackle integration and what we have is de facto segregation is if we erase the boundaries between school districts. In Baltimore City and in Baltimore County, they're 2 entirely separate districts. Next generation schools require this fundamental principle that at every next generation school, 25 to 55% of the student slots are reserved for students that qualify for free and reduced lunch meals. What that means, though, is that you have to create, thank you, you have to create the type of school that every student, no matter how wealthy they are, there's a high demand for that academy or institution. That's going to require different thinking. It's going to require different types of school designs. It's going to require partnerships with private industry. We're going to have to really think differently to create that type of demand. Additionally, the accountability has to be through the state as opposed to a district, because the enrollment is happening throughout the state of Maryland. And we cannot link your academic achievement to the zip code in which your parents choose to live or don't have a choice to live. And so unless we break that coupling, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for us to really tackle this problem at scale. We require an entity to help guide the work called EdCo. I'm more than willing to kind of get more into this, into the sessions. There's a session B7, Sarah McLean, who I've worked very closely with. She's at Harvard. We'll be talking about EdCo in this, so there's a workshop this afternoon that you can kind of dive into the details. Finally, last but not least, I want to make sure that I give you all information. On the ground in Baltimore City, Carl Alexander, who is here somewhere in the back over there, professor at the Hopkins School of Education and Sociology, has created, with the 21st Centuries Initiative, a Thurgood Marshall Alliance, which is an advocacy group to promote socioeconomically diverse schools in Baltimore. Unfortunately, there are way too few, but we are trying to create a network, and Carl has been the lead here of trying to highlight the benefit of this work. And then lastly, this is an amazing room. This is what change can look like if we go back and do the work and have the tough conversations. Please, let's stay in touch. Please reach out. This is the moment to make a difference. What we saw in Ferguson and Baltimore does not have to be the destiny for our urban areas across the country. And this is the moment to fix it. We have to own where we are and do something about it. So thank you all very much.